how to plan B, but I also had naivete. You go to a club at 16, back in the day when licenses were made of paper, and you could use a little bit of whiteout.
I'm laughing because we did it in New Jersey. We probably had the same license.
You know, you just move.
Different things like that, like things you would never think of. Crazy stuff. We said yes a lot to mostly everything and everyone.
Jon Bon Jovi spent 40 years as the face of rock and roll romance. The man who wrote Living on a Prayer married his high school sweetheart in secret. But in April 2024, he sat, music, down for an interview and said something that made headlines around the world. He admitted he got away with murder. He mentioned a 100 girls and he called it an arrogant cliché. What really happened behind closed doors? Why did Dorothea stay after everything? And what did that confession actually mean? The truth is messier than any love song he ever wrote. Jon Bon Jovi was born as John Francis Boniovi Jr. on March 2, 1962 in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. And from the start, his life carried a certain grit. Both of his parents had served in the United States Marines, which meant the house was built on discipline, hard work, and a kind of toughness you do not learn from books. His father, John Francis Boniovi, Sr., born in 1930, came home from service and worked as a barber. His mother, Carol Shy, born in 1940, carried a fire of her own and once said the Marine Corps was nothing compared to her childhood. Later, she became a florist, music, and ran different businesses over the years. And while the family stayed working ass, she never let their spirit shrink. John grew up with two brothers, Anthony and Matthew, in a home where you learn to stand your ground. But you also learn to show up for your people. There was another side to his mother that made their story even more unusual because Carol had lived a life that felt like it belonged to a movie. In the early 1960s, she became one of the original Playboy bunnies at the Manhattan Playboy Club on 57th Street, which opened in 1962, the same year John was born. She worked around women who later became famous, and she even crossed paths with big celebrities, including Frank Sinatra, which John later called a cool chapter of her life. Still, none of that glamour turned their home into something fancy. She and John's father met while both were enlisted. And after that, they built a modest life, raising 3 boys and handling whatever came their way. Many years later, Carol stayed close to John's world, too, even helping shape the fan community by founding and running the band's official fan club, which is why fans called her Mom Joy. She passed away in July 2024, only 3 days before her 84th birthday, and John described her as a force to be reckoned with, which fits the way she seemed to power the whole family forward. That drive showed up in John early, and it showed up loud. By 1974, when he was only 12, he formed his first band, often remembered as Rays, and he jumped straight into a school talent contest with the kind of boldness you cannot teach. The funny part is they finished music last, but he did not fold. He kept going because losing once did not feel like a stop sign to him. Around that, music, same age, he started learning piano and guitar, teaching himself Elton John songs, and instead of seeing music as a hobby, he treated it like a destination. He was still a kid, yet he was already hanging around local New Jersey clubs, carrying this steady belief that he was going to become a rock star. Not someday, but for real. As the years moved, the pieces started clicking into place. At 16, music, he met David Bryan, born David Bryan Rashbaum, and they formed an R&B cover band called Atlantic City Expressway. They were minors, but they still played regularly in New Jersey clubs, and that tells you how hungry they were. John kept bouncing through early band setups, too, including a group called Jon Bon Jovi and the Wild Ones. And he played places like the Fast Lane. He was building stage time, building nerve, building the kind of comfort that comes only when you have played through nerves so many times that the nerves stop winning. Then high school gave him something else that mattered just as much as the music, and it happened in a very ordinary way. John started at St. Joseph High School in Medicine, New Jersey for freshman year, but he was asked to leave before finishing sophomore year. And whatever the reason was, it pushed him onto a new path. He transferred to Saraville War Memorial High School in Parland. And in 1980, he met Dorothea Hurley. The moment became famous later because John admitted he was struggling in history and she let him cheat off her. He said in an interview years later that he was drawn to her from the minute he saw her. And that feeling never changed. It is almost funny that something so simple, two teenagers in a classroom and a history grade on the line, became the start of a love story that would outlast fame, tours, and decades of noise. They came from the same kind of New Jersey life. And that shared background mattered more than people realize. Jon was not raised like a superstar. And Dorothea was not raised to be impressed, by one. She knew the real person before the posters, before the headlines, before the screaming crowds made everything feel larger than life. Dorothea also had her own strength. And it was not just emotional strength. She trained in karate, became a serious martial artist, and later reached a fourth-degree black belt, and worked as a karate instructor. Profiles from the early 1990s even mentioned her national ranking at the time, and Jon talked about her like someone you do not mess with. That independence became part of what held them steady because she was never going to be swallowed by someone else's spotlight. Still, love does not move in a straight line, especially when ambition is in the room. In 1985, they briefly broke up after being together for years. And it happened right when Jon's career pressure was rising. During that separation, he dated actress Diane Lane for about 5 months. And for a moment, it looked like Jon and Dorothea might truly be over. Yet the space between them ended up showing what they were to each other, and they found their way back. Dorothea later spoke about it like a life lesson, not a life ending. And maybe that is why they returned stronger. They learned what it cost to lose each other. And they learned that fame was not going to be allowed to make their choices for them. While his personal life was shifting, his music life was doing its own fight for survival. In 1982, Jon recorded a song called Runaway, at Power Station in New York using session musicians, including bassist Hugh McDonald and keyboardist Roy Bittan. Then he did the thing every hungry musician does. He carried that demo to labels and tried to, get a yes. He got rejection instead again and again from major labels. And the silence starts to feel personal when you are hearing it everywhere. At one point he was close to cheating, which is the part people forget when they talk about overnight success. Then in 1983 he made, a move that feels almost like a scene from a film. He walked into 103.5 FM, the Apple and Lake Success, New York, and pitched Runaway directly to DJ Chip Ort. The station was new. Hobart took a chance and the song ended up on a compilation album called New York Rocks, 1983. That one crack of light changed everything because the song caught fire and started playing far beyond one room. The only problem was simple and terrifying at the same time. Jon did not even have a band yet, so he built one fast. When the band first formed in 1983, his original lead guitarist was Dave Sabo, a childhood neighbor. But Sabo left to return to college and later co-founded Skid Row. The band needed a replacement and that gap brought Richie Sambora into the history. Richie had been connected through Alec John. Their third album, and it turned their struggle into a stampede. Most of the writing happened in Richie Sambora's mother's basement in New Jersey, with Jon showing up like a man on a mission, even bringing pizza to get the day started and working until evening. Recording sessions took place from January to July 1986 at Little Mountain Sound Studios in Vancouver with producer Bruce Fairbar, and the result landed like thunder. The album hit #1 on the Billboard 200 and held that spot for 8 straight weeks, and it became the best-selling album of 1987 in the United States. Over time, it reached massive sales and major certifications, and suddenly, the band that once froze in an empty apartment was filling arenas. A big piece of that explosion came from how they wrote, because they pulled in songwriter Desmond Child after learning he had co-written Kiss's hit I Was Made for Loving You. When Desmond joined Jon and Richie, the first day together produced You Give Love a Bad Name. And that song became their first #1 hit. Desmond also co-wrote Living on a Prayer. And the story inside it, working class people holding on to hope, matched the way Jon's world had actually felt. The wild part is Jon was not fully sold on Living on a Prayer at first, and he only changed his mind when the band built the arrangement into what we all know now. That is how close success can sit to doubt. Even in the same room, with that era, they became more than a band. They became a global moment. Tours stretched across countries, arenas filled night after night, and Jon became the kind of face that fans treated like a dream you could almost touch. It is the kind of fame that can swallow your private life if you let it. Which is why what happened next shocked everyone. On April 29, 1989, Jon and Dorothea secretly eloped in Las Vegas right at the peak of everything. He was 27 and she was 26. And the timing was almost unbelievable because the band was riding huge success and had just played 3 sold-out music nights at the Great Western Forum in Los Angeles from April 26 to 28. According to Jon, he looked at Dorothea and basically said he needed a higher high and he had an idea. "Go to Vegas now," she answered like a normal person would, asking if he meant right now, and he meant right now. They got married at the Graceland Wedding Chapel without telling the manager, the band, security, or even their parents. They did not even have rings. And one version of the story says the cab driver served as the witness. When the news hit, it created chaos. And Jon later said it shocked everybody. People around him feared it would hurt the band's image because in that era, the industry loved selling the fantasy of the available rock star. Jon had to stand his ground and defend the choice because to him it was not a brand move. It was his real life. Bon Jovi's life on the road looked shiny from far away, but up close it worked like a machine that never stopped. From 1984 to 2015, they ran through 14 major tours, and many of them stretched for about 18.5 months at a time. The shows didn't just stay in one corner of the world, either. They crossed 52 countries again and again until the calendar stopped